Right now, voters are excited by change.
Bring on the democratic socialism, please.
Welcome to All Over the Map. I'm John King. We learn by listening to voters from all across the country and all across the political spectrum.
If you're Chuck Schumer, damn right I'm dangerous.
If progressive means common sense, then I'm a progressive.
Today, the rise of the left and the fight for the Democratic Party. A big primary win in Michigan, but can Abdul El-Sayed win a purple state in November?
A lot of the things that he has done and said during the primary were going to come back to haunt.
Democratic Socialists and their allies see these big 2026 wins as a giant springboard to 2028.
That we pay to care for our people instead of the flattening of Palestinians and oppressed people abroad is not a radical act. It is basic and core humanity.
I feel it's swinging away from authoritarian rule and Donald Trump's administration.
It's not radical to want everybody to have, food, water, shelter, education, healthcare.
Fantastic mix of all over the map voters today. All Democrats for this conversation, and all of you live on the front lines of this big, giant debate within the Democratic Party right now. As we explore it, I just want to tee up the conversation with a few yes or no questions. Are you excited in some congressional races? Now, this huge race in Michigan, elsewhere in the country, we're starting to see more progressive, anti-establishment, in some cases, Democratic Socialist candidates win these primaries for the Democrats. Are you excited by that? Yes or no? All right, everyone's excited. That's good. Do you agree with more moderate voices in the party who voice the concern that, maybe you can sell that in New York City, but there are places in the country, and some saying we're going to find this out in Michigan, where you can't sell that. You can't win in certain districts, or you can't win statewide, and the Republicans are going to label us all socialist. Does that worry you? Let's take the big Michigan result as an example. Abdul El-Sayed won the Democratic nomination for Senate out there. He's for Medicare for all. He wants the billionaires to pay more. He wants the United States to stop arms sales to Israel right now. Do you believe a candidate with that agenda could win statewide where you live?
Yes. Oh.
So let's start the conversation there. As you know, you're all part of what I'll call the Democratic family. Your family's having a debate right now about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. The Speaker of the House, a Republican, trying to protect his fragile majority, says that they are going to go national with this message that the country faces the choice between common sense and communism. Jade, I was just out to see you before the primary in Michigan. You're from the rural northern part of Michigan, that the idea that this is too liberal, too progressive, too socialist, too much government. Can they sell that? Can Republicans sell that?
I'm not as worried about it because it's not about what Republicans are selling as much as what voters are excited by. And right now, voters are excited by change, and voters are excited by a progressive candidate in Abdul El-Sayed. Republicans are going to rail against our nominees regardless of who they are.
Why is this happening? Why are we seeing anti-establishment forces have success, not just in blue New York City? What Mayor Mamdani did was a remarkable achievement, but not just there, and in many cases, against strong Democratic candidates who are well-funded. Some of them have the power of incumbency. Why is this happening?
I think part of this is happening because the Democrats and the Democratic establishment has not sort of apologized for the original sin, which is we had one job in the 2024 presidential election, and that was to make sure that Donald Trump did not come back to the White House. And the Democratic establishment and President Joe Biden decided that Joe Biden was the one to do it, even though he was older, seemingly out of touch with everyday people, and no one's apologized for it. And there is a new generation that is anxious, and they want new things for their generation. And I don't think the establishment Democrats and the party have reckoned with that yet.
I believe money, the corporate money in politics, everybody is on the corporate dole.
I think it also just comes down to people want concrete change in their lives, right? Like most everyday people don't really care about what the policies are. What they care about is being able to afford groceries, being able to afford gas, right? And the Democratic Socialists are the ones making those changes. You know, for those of us who student loans are under the, SAVE Act that are now going to come into repayment, and we have no idea how we're going to pay those loans, especially when we've already paid more than what we've taken out. We want a candidate who's going to take some of that burden away from us.
I want to hold up a picture, and everybody, can you see this? It's a pendulum. And so we have political extremes on the right and on the left. And things have gone way too far in the, I won't say the right direction, but actually far right. And so we have momentum to swing back the opposite direction in a natural ebb and flow. We've got momentum and we need to capitalize on that.
Do you worry that you'll overdo it? Overshoot the whatever the sweet spot is?
I feel the momentum. I feel the momentum in my state, in my community, and I'm going to roll with that. I feel pretty confident.
But I guess one of the questions is, is this a healthy debate for the party? I want you to listen. This is John Fetterman here, who's the Democratic senator from Pennsylvania, who was a hero for progressives when he won. And now they're kind of trying to say, what happened to you, Senator?
I have a great relationship with vast majority of Democrats. We have really great candidates across the map. In Ohio, Georgia, in Texas, we have great ones. But, I have a real problem with people that are proud to campaign people that loved Hamas or that they love communist kinds of regime and under those kinds of policies overall. And that's why I'm saying objectively as a Democrat in the Senate saying that puts that seat in danger.
Senator Fetterman says puts that seat in danger.
He's not right. And it shouldn't be surprising to anybody that he's trying to rip on Abdul al-Sayed when he's funded by the people who were actively working against Abdul al-Sayed's entire campaign. And I think that we as Democrats need to trust the voters here. I mean, it says a lot that Abdul won in a state where the entire Democratic establishment was against him, and he was outspent over 10-1. And he won in rural areas, like the rural area I'm from. And I mean, his progressive message is remarkably simple. Medicare for all, money out of politics, money in your pocket. And I think that people are looking for someone with a simple message who wants to fight for them, the people, not big corporations.
Him even, bringing up Hamas in that interview to me, right? Like, I feel like that's that one thing that they are not understanding about, the uprising of voters and where we want and the type of candidates that we want. When people like Mamdani win, that is going to give a lot of people permission, right? And like it, it just kind of validates what the voters wanted, that like we can put these types of people in office.
3 Democratic incumbents have been beaten by progressive candidates who have made Israel a big issue in Colorado and 2 in New York, Congressman DeGette, Congressman Goldman, Congressman Espaillat. Melissa mentioned nuance. Well, let me ask this question first. Yes or no? Do you think the United States should stop all military aid to Israel? We have 1 no. Why, Lisa?
I don't think that the Netanyahu government needs a blank check. And I think that is what we have been doing. We have been giving a blank check to the Netanyahu government. Does that mean that we should pull out entirely from support that we have historically lent to Israel? No. But there seem to be no guardrails. Is whatever the Netanyahu government wants, we are providing. And I think the pushback that you're seeing, especially amongst young people, is that this is entirely the wrong direction. And while we should be very conscious of our historic allies, that doesn't mean that anybody should get a blank check, particularly the leadership of this country that is clearly going in a direction that Americans are uncomfortable with.
Man, it's just hard to hear, right? Like I get, historic relationships and stuff, but I think that's part of what we, these younger people and, with progressives in this party is that we don't like that. What are we getting out of that? What are we getting out of that besides supporting a government who is, actively being okay with civilians dying, and like, this it's not even a war anymore. It's an all-out invasion.
Let me ask the question, and let me start it with a yes or no. Do you believe that Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state? Yes or no?
Is that really a yes or no question?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it has become it's a great debate. Let's have the conversation. That it has become a yes. I think it has become a yes or no question because of some of these conversations. To Melissa, to your point, I mean, I get it from my travels. Trust me, you feel the anger. The counter argument to that, and I think why Lisa was trying to make this about Bibi, not about Israel.
Yeah. Also, sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your yes or no question. I'm just saying,
it's great. This is why we're here. You're in charge.
I've been talking to you about this, like you said, since fall of 2023, when Democrats didn't even want to say the word ceasefire. And we're still here multiple years later trying to tell people that we don't want to see our tax dollars funding a government state-sanctioned genocide overseas. And at this point, I know for myself and for a lot of voters I talk to, not just young people, it is humiliating that we are a co-signer on what is happening to the Palestinian people. And it is embarrassing. And to right the ship is an understatement of what we need to do. And so the yes or no question to, does Israel have a right to exist? No government has the right to exist at the expense of other people. Their people, of course, have a right to exist and of course have the right to live peacefully. But that's my answer to that. So if anybody else wants to hop in, feel free.
The Israelis and the Palestinians have a right to coexist.
One of the things that was alarming to me when you were saying, Jade, you brought up how progressives or Democrats were afraid to say the word ceasefire. Like even in my city, like in Tucson, just our city council, you see some of the most progressive, elected officials who are like stumbling around on this norm, and you would just expect them to double down and say absolutely ceasefire because we don't want innocent people dying. But just seeing that effect on some of the most progressive candidates, it was very eye-opening.
What I hear quite clearly is that a significant rebalancing at a minimum to the U.S.-Israeli relationship is something that you are hoping you get from these new candidates. What else do you think this new blood in the Democratic Party, when it comes to Washington, should be pushing for on day one?
We have to do something about our allies. We have to do something about repairing the damage or preparing to repair the damage that the president has done with our allies.
Medicare for all, 100% top of my list.
Even though that right now they don't have the votes to pass it, they just don't. But you want them to fight for it. Force the vote.
Yeah, the first day would be a long day for me because not only would we vote on Medicare for all, but we would also restore the Affordable Care Act and the subsidies that allowed people in Medicaid expansion to be able to have health care. Millions of people are losing their health care now because of this. We would repeal H.R. 1, the big, so-called big, beautiful bill where 4 million people have already been removed from the SNAP program. These are people that cannot afford to get the nutrition that they need. I would pass establish a federal law for voting rights because the repeal of the Voting Rights Act is an abomination and a total departure from our historical move forward as a country. And of course, I would pass a law that would provide abortion rights throughout the country, that would restore essentially what was Roe. This would be a great day. This would be a great day for Democrats if we were able to vote and pass those things.
There are two very different approaches to healthcare, if you will, and so this is a test. A lot of people are trying to make a comparison to the rise of these more progressive, in some cases, Democratic Socialist candidates to the Tea Party. The question for some of these Democratic Socialists candidates coming to Washington is, they believe firmly in Medicare for all. My question is, some of these candidates will be Their choice. More ideological, more rigid, saying no, I want the whole loaf. And others, as we're watching Mamdani in practice, do you see where's the pragmatism kicking? I asked this question of El Sayed when I was out there. Would he hold firm for Medicare for all or nothing? Or if he had a chance to at least restore those subsidies, would he do it? Listen.
Let me offer an analogy here, okay? We want to climb Mount Everest. We will not have achieved our goal until we climb Mount Everest. But right now, like, we've fallen into a ravine, right? They just cut Medicaid and ACA subsidies. Like, we're in a ravine. At this point, we just got to get back to base camp. I understand that.
Does that approach make sense? Or would you prefer someone who went to the floor and say, sorry, I can't give you my vote because I need the whole loaf?
He talked about ravines, and I was going to talk about the rule of holes. You first have to stop digging, and people who have lost their subsidies for Medicaid expansion, like, they need help immediately. And if you restored the subsidies for Medicaid expansion, then you could take care of your first problem while you work on reaching Everest, right? I'm glad to hear that he is taking that pragmatic approach. It's yes and.
And I don't think he'll be alone in taking that approach. I think that's going to be like a standard approach for progressives across the board.
So part of this conversation is, and again, we'll see the Republicans throughout the fall campaign say, socialist, communist, and so on and so forth. Part of the question is, how do individual Democratic candidates in their individual races deal with that? And does it sink through with voters? Some politicians get timid sometimes. I want you to listen to the mayor of New York, who knows, that people are going to throw this at him, and he says, go for it. Listen.
I know there are many who use socialist as a dirty word, something to be ashamed of. They can try all they want, but we will not be ashamed of using government to fight for the many, not simply the few. We will not be ashamed of adding more heat pumps to NYCHA buildings in the Rockaways, or building more supportive housing in Harlem, or standing steadfast alongside our trans neighbors.
So, Ed, the question is, again, that's New York City, an overwhelmingly blue area. Can you use that word in rural North Carolina? Is there a different way?
I think people are ready for, strength in communities and legislation that continues to strengthen our communities and our neighbors and our relationships, as opposed to funding, taking our tax dollars and sending it overseas. I think that's really what the people of this state want. And when you use the term progressive, I think people are going to catch on to that term and start looking at it more positively, almost like as a third-party alternative to the establishment. I think that's really where we're heading.
I just hope that everybody understands and looks at that when the president came out and said, we don't have money for health care, we don't have money for child care, but then all of a sudden spent hundreds of billions of dollars dropping bombs in Iran, but we didn't have money for this, but we have money for this.
I also think, we're limited to pretty much two parties, right? And like Ed, like kind of what you were pointing to is that there are socialists, communists, progressives, and if we want to be, effective, we have to just, register as a Democrat. But I think what we are seeing is people are finally realizing that, just a capitalist centered, nation is not for the people, right? Every time they do this, they always say that it's not going to affect our gas or whatever, and it absolutely does. And so I think we're just done believing what they're saying at this point, because we have enough evidence and they have a horrible resume that we can refer to.
Just look back at when Bernie first ran and the policies that he came up with then. They sounded to the masses like it was like crazy. But now the same things that we're saying he was saying then are saying now, and they sounded much more pragmatic.
Among the people who say this is the way it goes, we're a big party, let's have big debates, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, in the case of Michigan, steps in and says, look, families disagree. That's okay. Listen.
In Michigan, personally, I think Abdul El-Sayed is that candidate. But these debates are normal in the party. This is what a primary process is for. And we resolve this through the primary election. And then we all come together and support whoever the nominee is.
Is that what this is? It's just, we're a big family. Sometimes, things get feisty, but then we're good? Or is it more than that?
I think her points are exactly spot on. We've seen the contrast of what happens when we go so far extreme right. We've seen that part of it, and people are ready to move back the other direction. This is a pivot point for us.
Yeah, I think people are ready for change, right? And so we're gonna come together in the end to vote for change.
Michigan just showed how successful and effective our primaries can be. They hashed it out. They went back and forth at it. And then as soon as Abdul was declared the winner, everybody fell in line. Alyssa Slotkin, Governor Whitmer, former, Senator, everybody fell in line.
What's the lasting power here? I ask in the context of the old guy in the conversation. Bill Clinton won twice, and people said, oh, look, the Democratic Party, there's a new Democratic Party. That's actually what they called it, that's moving to the center of America. He served 2 terms. Then there was a Republican president, and then there was Obama. Obama came along and said, oh, look, the Democratic Party's gone now more back to the left because Obama's more liberal than Bill Clinton. Where are we now? In the idea that, to Ed's point about the pendulum, where is the Democratic pendulum?
I feel it's swinging away from authoritarian rule and Donald Trump's administration. I think we can all agree on that as a party, and whatever direction we have to take, we're going to do it because we don't want any more of the current situation. I think we all agree on that.
It's swinging left, for sure.
Voters aren't dumb. They know that wealthier people are getting wealthier while they're struggling to meet the basic needs of their families.
Rising tides lift all ships, right? When we are helping everyone, it benefits everyone. We know that trickle-down economics don't work, right? We see crime going down in New York City right now because people don't want to be committing crime. And when we're meeting their basic needs, crime goes down. It benefits everyone. And so I think, bring on the democratic socialism, please.
It's even a sad idea that we have to put those type of labels on common sense. I mean, it shouldn't be a progressive thing to say that people should be able to have clean water. Okay, so if progressive means common sense, then I'm a progressive.
Well put.
Hell yeah, Walter. I like that.
Thanks, Walter.
You get an email from Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, and they say, in a sentence or two, what would you like us to do, focus on between now and November? Go.
Just stop spending money on war.
I think sometimes the Democrats forget that the goal is to be popular enough to get 50% plus 1 to win, right?
I'd want to see candidates talk about Medicare for all, student loan forgiveness, affordability of things like groceries and gas, things that are affecting everyday Americans.
I would like to see more combating the Trump administration, more slowing down the Trump administration, more standing up to the Trump administration. ICE is completely out of control. We have armed mass guards in the streets like we're in Star Wars, and I hope people take lessons from their favorite dystopian films and use it when they're combating this administration.
We've had a great conversation about where the Democratic Party is and where you hope it goes between now and November. As always, thank you. Appreciate your coming to us in this format, and I can't wait. Some of you I've seen recently because of the primaries where you live. Others I'll see in the weeks and months ahead. And again, thank you so much. Little footnote here, just for our viewers. Some of you probably figured it out listening to that conversation. We talked to our voters there before the latest big insurgent versus Democratic establishment primary test. That, of course, was the race for Wisconsin governor. And there, the Milwaukee County executive, David Crowley, beat the left's favorite, the Democratic Socialist, Francesca Hong. So you could argue 2 big Midwestern states, 2 different verdicts. An anti-establishment win in Michigan, and the establishment strikes back in Wisconsin. That's true. but I would argue it's also misleading and perhaps an overly simplistic take. Remember, El-Sayed just won in Michigan. Crowley just won in Wisconsin. This divide among the Democrats is very, very real. And the recent numbers suggest it literally slices the party right down the middle. So what's the immediate challenge for Democrats? To try to heal those wounds and to unite between now and November, when the issue then is Trump and the Republicans. The next challenge, though, this fight, this struggle, this debate will return. When? In 2028, a presidential year. So the fight will return and it will get a much bigger stage because that's what presidential cycles do. They take debates national. Thanks for your time. We'll see you next time.